Thank you for joining us this evening, and thanks to my colleagues in public programs, Andy Hawks and Megan Hoyer, for organizing tonight's talk. I'm Adrienne Edwards, Inglespire Family Curator and Director of Curatorial Affairs here at the Whitney. Malik Gaines, Jade Gordon, and Alex Segade are My Barbarian. With my colleague, curatorial assistant Mia Matthias, I'm lucky enough to have worked with My Barbarian on this 20-year survey. It's intense, beautiful, and gratifying when artists trust you to survey their work, no less for 2 decades. My Barbarian has been a vital part of the scene and have a long history at the Whitney. They were in the 2014 Whitney Biennial and performed in 3 of Megan's public programs. I became aware of them back in 2005 at the Performa Biennial where I used to work. And they did a wonderful project for Participant Inc., and it was incredible. And over the ensuing years, as they played an important role as performance in museums really reached a crescendo it had not for more than 30 years. This ambitious multi-format survey we have done together, it's an exhibition, a performance program, a catalog, a newly commissioned performance video, delves into the complex ideas and surprising inspirations and vital questions their work explores. We've taken these 20 years, as you will see here, and collapsed them into a jewel box of a gallery that operates as a kind of entertainment system, as Alex likes to say. This show was entirely reconceived during the pandemic. They've made a 3-channel video created on the occasion of this show, which features performances for the camera, video documentation of live performances, photographs, and previously unreleased footage drawn from the group's extensive archive. Along with the projected triptych you see here, the artists have animated a selection of artworks, including sculptures and paintings and drawings and masks and textiles, costumes and puppets, which are theatrically lit in correspondence with the related videos. Together, these wide-ranging works surface pivotal themes across the collective's output, including references to their founding in the LA DIY scene, using site-specific spectacles performed at a range of international venues, responding to performance methods and theory, and creating art that is inextricable from the times and the context in which it is made. Presented alongside this exhibition are a series of 3 live performances that reimagine iconic shows from My Barbarian's history that sort of show you the array of theatrical styles and formal strategies they have explored. We kicked things off with Transparency 2021 on November 5th. It was made specifically for the Whitney, although it had been first performed at MoCA LA. It featured music, a live feed, text, and disco-inspired dance numbers that appeared throughout the museum in both public areas and in our private administrative offices. And we had lines that wrapped around the museum doubly. The second performance, Songbook, will be live streamed from LA on December 18th and is a musical showcase drawing from the group's extensive repertoire over the last 2 decades. Finally, the series finale, Double Future, will take place in the museum's Hess Theater from February 24th through the 26th, and is a double bill performance that responds to the contemporary moment with prescient works that address class struggle and environmental collapse. And we're not done yet. We have also commissioned a new performance video, as I mentioned, titled Rosebird, which we'll showcase in 2023. We're delighted to say the show will travel to ICA LA in September of 2022. So LA, please be on the lookout for that, those of you out there. And then lastly, I'm really, really thrilled that the first monograph, the book, just arrived yesterday. It's hot off the press, features insightful essays by Leah Gangitano, the founder and director of Participant, such an early supporter of their work here in New York, Joshua Chambers Letson, a performance studies scholar and professor at Northwestern University. Of course, I wrote something, Most importantly, I would argue, each artist contributed a text that expands upon the interrelated yet distinct things in their work. Alex wrote about showcore, Malik wrote about site-specific spectacle, Jade wrote about post-political theater, all annotated one another's essays with their own recollections, which is pretty cool. We're lucky to have them share with us this evening their thoughts on the work. After the talk, Mia will moderate the Q&A. And with that, I'm really delighted to hand things off to Alex Segade. Thank you so much. Enjoy the talk.
Thank you, Adrienne. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Whitney Public Programs. Thank you to the Whitney. Thank you to Mia. Thank you to Joseph and Katie, Joseph Logan and Katie Nelson, who designed the book with us. We have so many thank yous, and they will just continue. But I'm going to start first by sharing my screen. And thank you all, by the way, for joining us. I really appreciate it, wherever you are. Okay, to move this, press. HOWCORE. And yeah, I'm just going to read some selections. So, what kind of music does My Barbarian play? Showcore. Every band had a core. Ours was a hall of dressing room mirrors. Showcore wore secondhand Broadway t-shirts and required multiple lead singers, accompanied by Malik's... Oh, the volume could be louder, I'm hearing. Should I sit closer? Let's see. Is this better? Something in the... Okay, I'm just going to keep going. All right. Where was I? Yeah. All right. So listen, we wore Broadway t-shirts and required multiple lead singers accompanied by Malik's Rhodes, an electric piano we lugged from our Pasadena practice space to venues on Sunset Boulevard. Showcore got us on stage without having to rent the theater. Showcore acted out. Malik, Jade, and I talked a lot about performance experiences we'd had in childhood that were traumatic. Showcore allowed us to reclaim our performing bodies while admitting we were hurt. Our songs afforded us alter egos. Genres boiled down to cabinets of feet we called hypernarrative, embracing excess without attempting realism. My attitude at the time is expressed in the song Off Broadway, our showcoreist showstopper. What's the note? Let's see. Da, da, da. Start the show. My sweat is fire exploding. Want to take off my clothing, but I'm shy. Hello, front row. Ballet bar never ending. Reaching over, extending high. Kickball change 1, 2, 3. Rearrange 1, 2, 3. Feel the pain 1, 2, 3. And sometimes I cry. I can sing it better than that, but that's how that's a good rendition for now. All right, the next thing. Hello, there we go. So here are some flyers. We each have a different explanation for the name My Barbarian. I thought it was a gay Saturday morning cartoon. My Barbarian was also the title of our first number, an anthemic 3-part harmony, a love song to the uncivilized. Ask the librarian who never knew about My Barbarian. My Barbarian asserts an identification with and a claiming of the position of the other. Yes, My Barbarian was forged in Dungeons & Dragons roleplay, imaginations of toxic, intoxicating fantasies, but also our band name opened up an ongoing conversation about what is inside and who is outside. My Barbarian first found a voice in and out of tune in showcore. Showcore is performed like a spell. There is respect for superstition among show people. Showcore is a magic trick that doesn't try to fool you. You could call it camp, but we thought of it as what Artaud called a true illusion. Vinyl is magic. We collected records, the three of us, learning songs by Shiku Barkey, Kate Bush, Nona Hendrix, Kander and Ebb, Dagmar Krause, Abby Lincoln, Stevie Nicks, Laura Nero, Buffy St. Marie, Kurt Weill, and Stevie Wonder. We studied the arrangements of Amon Duel 2, the B-52s, Boney M, Free Design, Kid Creole and the Coconuts, LaBelle, Os Mutanchis, and the Pointer Sisters, Rotary Connection, Pentangle, and the Roaches. This music was better on a record player. Obsolete technologies gave this media the quality of a seance. Malik, Jade, and I worked together on plays and short films before 2000, but it wasn't until that year when we started performing as My Barbarian at Space Silver Lake Lounge in LA that we found our audience. Our friends played with us, musicians including Tiffany Anders, Norwood Cheek, Ando, Dustin Erickson, Jimmy Hay, Tim Coe, Scott Martin, Giles Miller, Andy Ochi, and Amy Yao. We made costumes, props, and posters with artists Scully Acosta, Patterson Beckwith, Pearl C. Shung, Rosalie Knox, Daniel McDonald, Matthew Monahan, Jeff Ono, Anna Sue Hoy, and Laura Schnitker. Malik and I were a young Black and Latinx, to use a term that did not exist yet, gay couple living in an anti-queer, pro-war, white supremacist society. There was talk of California seceding, and we were for it. My Barbarian was nothing if not separatist. So what if our union destroys the state? Small price to pay for my soulmate, we sang. I say we, but the three of us spoke from a non-singular position, performing allyship before that term was commonly used. My Barbarian was a staging ground for ways of being and making together. Even with dead-end day jobs, showcore became the stretch fabric of our lives, playing show tunes from shows that, as Nina Simone said, haven't been written yet. Purple Eyes was our first attempt, stringing our songs into a cabaret about zombies and the exploitative economics of tourism. It was performed first at the Room Theater. Around that time, our CD, Cloven Soft Shoe, 2004, was put out by KXLU DJs who liked what we were doing. Major indie labels were freaked out by us. Showcore was not for everyone. My Barbarian began to combine performance art strategies with traditions drawn from theater history. Night Marathon in 2003 was a durational site-specific Penny Dreadful, it was 2002, was a durational site-specific Penny Dreadful at Fritz Haig's Sundown Salon here in Los Angeles. Medieval Morality was an institutional critique folk play about freelancing, custom made in versions at Max Center's Schindler House in Los Angeles and Perez Projects Berlin, which is in the video in the installation at the Whitney. At the Roy and Edna Disney CalArts Theater, the Red Cat, here in Los Angeles, we presented MB, the Mary Blair story in 2004, a musical review about the life of visionary illustrator Mary Blair, whose work disappeared into the backgrounds of classic Disney movies. And Squirrel Radio Action from 2005, which is also in the installation, was a radio play commissioned by KPCC Southern California Public Radio about rodent vectors for bubonic plague. Their habitat shrinking, they passed the plague to humans, which they didn't want to do. This piece ends with a protest on the steps of Los Angeles City Hall. Fuzzy ears attached to our hats, singing the names of every city council member, warning them for all the good that that did. Common ground was where and when we came from, us three children of parents in 1970s California. We decided to write a show imagined as a double-sided album, California Suite and the Seven Pagan Rites, exploring our left coast lineage. The first side told the story of a radical theater dropout who takes a job on a cruise ship and gets killed while running drugs in San Diego. Meanwhile, in Iraq, gay Marines dream of going back to Camp Pendleton. Our burning flag, which is currently hanging in the Whitney lobby, was made for that scene. Composed with the mix and match mentality of counterculture, side 2 featured Pagan Rites, R-I-G-H-T-S, a psychedelic ode to DIY spiritualities. When asked to participate in the 2006 California Biennial at the Orange County Museum of Art, We made Pagan Rites into a 15-minute movie and installed it in a room with pillows and incense burning, right? There was incense. So years before we'd heard of art and objecthood, we sensed that theatricality was problematic. In true showcore form, we homed in on this problem, developed a performance strategy of reconsidering theater forms by setting them against the critical space of the white cube. Pagan Rites got us to New York, performed at Participant Inc. That got us invited back to participate in the 2005 Performa Biennial. In our Boyle Heights studio, we crafted a mystery play about class warfare titled You Were Born Poor and Poor You Will Die. Pagan Rites referenced mythology, but Born Poor was a myth. A plebeian novitiate is condemned by the high priestess when he fails to pay a tithe, and the bull god, who is never satisfied, destroys the city with a volcano. As the priestess sings it, the city-state requires blood to stay great. Don't you know? That's showbiz, kid. Jeff Ono made masks, breastplates, and phalluses out of papier-mâché dollar bills, referencing ancient theater while materially embedded in late capitalism. The musical logic of call and response and counterpoint, fostered by starting as a band, is still how My Barbarian works. But the band itself ended with Mythologic Mass, a set list of songs from our self-made religion. I remember our last gig with the original lineup at the Silver Lake Lounge. We were showcore brilliance that night. The audience moved to our beat as we sang about violently overthrowing the government and annexing Mars. We had fun. Fun is one way for a community to take care of itself, but showcore, with its internal logic and deep-cut referentiality, was not infinitely scalable. Over 6 years into it, increasingly interested in performance art, My Barbarian broke up the band. But I can hear its vamping call emanating from a storage bin full of sequined stretch pants. Showcore is due for a comeback, which is going to be happening on December 18th, so check us out on YouTube. I'm going to hand it over to Malik now.
Thanks, Alex. I'm over here in this part of the studio, and I was going to talk about the next section of the book, which I'll summarize a few pieces that we worked on that we called site-responsive spectacles. Site-specific spectacles that has a better kind of alliterative project in it. And as My Barbarian's work began to use performance to obviate or understand or criticize people's entanglements with each other, we saw that as an extension of the way that we three had entangled ourselves. Our earlier preparation playing a music ensemble / theater troupe / art group interested in crossing each of those boundaries led to a series of performances that use the far-flung to play out the specific ways from the historical to the political to the phenomenological to the spatial that quote-unquote people may be quote-unquote together. This is, of course, a violent and disturbing history with occasional moments of brilliant collectivity, coordinated production, and love. You see here a good early example of this, The Gods of Canada, which was enacted at the power plant in Toronto at the Harbourfront Centre there, celebrating using a sort of ironic, overdone nationalist pageant, celebrating our perceived understanding of liberal social policies that we felt alienated from as citizens of the Bush era in the United States. So music animated a series of kind of anthems about liberal social policies that took form in a concert and a march and a sail by, seen here with our collaborators Andy Ochi and Scott Martin, and we worked with Lara Schnitger on these banners and costumes. And will it advance? There we go. Silver Mines was a no-draw developed to originally perform in the snow at the Aspen Art Museum. It told the story of tourists from the future who go back in time to go skiing because there is no snow in the future. And this was part of a move. You can see here, masks started to become very important, something we continue to work with till today. And it was part of a move to use the cues that the site offers to deepen theatrical elements of costume, setting, and narrative content. We were drawing both on official theater history, as in the reference to a no play, but also folding that into a kind of countercultural queer performance mode that we knew from our origins here in LA. Voyage of the White Widow, which was performed at De Appel in Amsterdam first, and then actually was at the Whitney in the old building in 2007 and toured around, was a play about Dutch sailors who are embedded in international trade. We used it as an opportunity to interact with the audience and deal with the kind of colonial histories that surround the theater forms we were really interested in. We were trying to use performance as a container for assembling both the presence of the site there within the histories of representation that coordinate meaning there, such as this Dutch golden age that influences the kind of sense of art in the West, that of course has at its core, transatlantic slavery, the origins of capitalism, and a lot of stuff we're still trying to overcome. At the end of this piece, the ocean levels rise and we become mermaids, and only the aquatic and the supernatural survive. Non-Western, similarly, was really pressing against these kinds of colonial questions. It was a mythic Western set in Los Angeles, a mythic Los Angeles at a time between kind of sovereign powers. And we were using the Western genre to interrogate coloniality as the frame for both the performance we were doing in El Matadero in Madrid in this instance, but also for ourselves. We're a kind of disunified group of people, and so our own kind of sense of subjectivity is also entangled with this history. In Ecos de los Ecos de los Ecos, we took a utopian philosophy that we found associated with the architecture of the using the Museo El Eco in Mexico City. And we explored that using a number of different video installation and live performance modes, including one in collaboration with the Mexico City-based cabaret troupe Las Reinas Chulas, who you see a clip of in the installation at the Whitney. And we were thinking about, the utopian and dystopian possibilities of modernist artistic projects that we were confronted with using art spaces to do our own kind of performance work. And we were thinking about the possibilities of these projects, both the speculative promise that they offer to change the world, to transform relations, to have us experience things differently, but also their ultimate inability to overcome the very powerful cultures that produce them. A lot of these works are utopian and dystopian at the same time, and act a kind of imaginary society that we'd love to live in, and also end in a kind of catastrophe. And doing these kinds of interrogations of the site, at a certain point, we became very aware of ourselves as, US Americans who have the privilege to go places and talk to people and learn about histories and geography. Performance than it is in real life. This piece that we did with a very inspiring and amazing troupe in Vilnius, Lithuania, called Liudni Slibinai. Its members were Dominikas Vaitekūnas, Vaidas Kublinskas, and Aiste Lasite. we tried to do a kind of cultural exchange around some of the historical signs we were seeing at this moment of economic collapse in Vilnius, and the very complicated histories of partisan resistance, sort of reorienting our ideas of left and right that we had played with so fervently from our kind of California origins, and tried to just account for who we were in this kind of performance exchange. And in this instance, we made a video with them in the forest, and also did a live performance at the Baltic Triennial in Vilnius. And here we were teaching each other the different folk dances of our authentic cultures. And of course, authenticity is an ironic concept in our work. Another way we were able to articulate this is through video installations, and a couple of those were based on such as the night episode, which you see here in an installation at Participant Inc. in New York in 2009, which was modeled after a horror genre TV show from the 1960s. It was at the time of economic collapse in the United States. We had a lot of anxieties about healthcare, and we used the horror genre as a way to depict a lot of these tensions that were going on. And genre is something we've played with throughout, and my sense increasingly was that these modernist ideas of autonomy and originality were white supremacist ideas. And genre is also a fantasy, but it's a productive fantasy that offers ways of speaking and acting and reading that rely on existing social agreements. And we enjoyed that there was an existing language there that we could adapt critically in these cases. Another example of this was Double Agency, which we made at Lacma, another TV series years later based on the 1960s Mission Impossible spy genre. And we used the campus, the galleries. Here's a scene in the European galleries, the offices, the exteriors, to stage our own kind of experience at this point, having worked in a lot of museums and art institutions, feeling sort of like spies in the museum, in these places that really powerfully try and coordinate differences between objects and subjects, between objecthood and subjectivity. What did it mean to be alive and to perform in these spaces? In the video in the installation at the Whitney Now, you see a section where we sing, paraphrasing a quote I heard from Judith Butler in a talk she had given at a museum when someone asked her about performance being used to enliven the institution. She asked, well, how do we know that the objects are really so dead? And how do we know that the people are really so alive? That kind of question really animated a lot of the thinking around this work. In this piece, we worked with the director, J.J. Stratford, and we had a cast of all-star guests, including Robbie Acklin, Now Bustamante, Jibbs Cameron, and Adam Dugas. Finally, I'll just mention a few pieces that were our weirdly persistent attempt to make institutional critique into a solid gold floor show. One is the case of the stairs at Lacma. Here you see we worked with the choreographer Hanna van der Kolk and Leilani Drakeford as we did a kind of reading. Another piece like this was The Fourth Wall at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. And this was an interesting case where the social practice budget was the only functioning budget in the museum after a moment of crisis. And so we were brought in to do this kind of institutional critique in a way that instrumentalized us to allow them to continue their program. So we became very aware not only of our own ironic approach to this, but to the ironies of doing this kind of performance, and tried to make those felt in the performance. And finally, we readapted that piece just a few weeks ago. My head is spinning, I don't know. This is in the lobby at the Whitney, using the idea of transparency in a sort of disco song that we organized with the help of the producer, Night Feelings. And we were interested in transparency as a modernist architectural principle, but also the complicity of that. And we use that, sort of the complicity of this critique as a way to just overshare our own feelings, anxieties, fears, and positions inside of the institution. And at the same time, you know, through it all, we really sought to still find pleasure in that kind of performance, to make those questions, the difficulties of critique, all exist at the same time. In this, you see Miguel Gutierrez, Will Rawls, and Katie Pyle, three esteemed dancers and choreographers who participated in that work. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jade, who's going to take us to the next section.
Thank you, Malik. Hi, Jade. I'm going to talk to you guys tonight about post-political theater and the projects that fall underneath that umbrella. So I'll first go with the post-living anti-action theater, or the POLAT. So our work up to about the late 2000s had been heavily influenced by queer camp humor, the Brechtian alienation effect, Artaud's ritual theater, 1960s radical theater collectives like the Living Theater and Rainer Werner Fassbinder's Anti-Theater, and Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed. The post-living anti-action theater was a framework for exploring and referencing this material, as well as a response to questions that we had about performance and politics. So we were thinking about ways to codify our performance strategies and teach them to others. And we wondered, how can these strategies exist outside of the context of our own group? So POLAT was a forum to explore these techniques in group building, cultural exchange, and political critique. And it was also an alter ego experimental theater troupe and encounter group. So it was first developed at a residency at the New Museum in New York during the U.S. Democratic primary in 2008. And from there, POLAT traveled to multiple international sites, including Trento, Italy, Cairo, Egypt, both in 2008, and then Madrid, Spain in 2010. And in each of these locations, and in others in North America, Canada, and the United States, POLAT brought together groups of local participants for a workshop period using games, singing, and consciousness raising. And the final workshop was a public performance in each of these sites. And participants of the workshops included visual artists, musicians, students, childcare providers, dancers, bankers, ski instructors, and nurses. The POLAT returned to the New Museum during the run-up to the election in 2016, reuniting a group of former participants that we called the POLAT All-Stars from various iterations of the project for a final series of performances and workshops. Right around the time of POLAT, I went back to graduate school to get a master's in applied theater. I was training to become a practitioner of Augusto Boal's techniques. And I felt some tension using political theater as a tool to make art versus using theater as a tool to make social change. And I had a lot of questions. Is social practice exploitative? Could I still have a starring role? Do we need an invitation from the communities that we're working with? Is it weird that the invitations that we did get were from art institutions who profited from the creative capital generated through our cultural community engagement? So I ultimately had to be okay with the reality that My Barbarian is not an activist theater troupe, but an art collective that invites audiences to critically question with us. A project that we did in between Baroque People's Theater. This was a multi-year project, first performed at the Kitchen in New York in 2011. There was a solo exhibition at Human Resources LA in 2012, and later performances at MoMA in New York, SF MoMA, and Art Basel Miami Beach. And so this piece was about the aesthetics of excess and poverty and the problem of inequity in the art world and the economy at large, examined through the tropes of classical and Baroque theater. And it consisted of multiple full-length videos, props, masks, wigs, a puppet theater that we made, modeled on an Italian Baroque theater that we'd seen at a museum in Vilnius, Lithuania, when we were working on the project Malik discussed, and numerous live performances consisting of an operatic song cycle, participatory games, and sometimes a fashion show or a dance contest. And around that time, I had gone to a very odd place in Northern California, a clown school, and I spent 2 weeks there doing an intensive mask workshop. And I came back to LA with a paper mache mask making technique, and I used it to make a set of masks for the Baroque People's Theater. And the aesthetic, then Grotowski, it's a trashy, poor theater. Like the bread and puppet theater, we used cheap materials, fabrics sold by the pound in downtown LA with really gaudy patterns, brown paper bags and wallpaper paste and spackle for the paper mache mask, costume jewelry, and tacky notions, fabric from the fabric store. This piece, Blood on the Cat's Neck, in 2014, My Barbarian adapted Rainer Werner Fassbinder's play Blood on the Cat's Neck. It was a performance and an installation commissioned by the Goethe Institute in New York. And the piece included video projections and a series of dolls and masks that we made that were based on the members of Fassbinder's performance troupe, the amphitheater troupe. The set that we performed in front of was a partially demolished wall. We had theatrical lighting and just a simple wooden table. The Goethe Institute was going to be relocating to another space after our show, so they let us partially knock down the back wall of the gallery to expose the inner steel structure of this space. This next piece, Counter Publicity, and a live performance project. It was based on an essay written by Jose Esteban Munoz in his book Disidentifications about Pedro Zamora, the AIDS activist and star of the Real World San Francisco, a reality show on MTV in the early 90s. And it was included as part of the Visual AIDS Day Without Art screening series in 2014. And in the video, we performed verbatim scenes from episodes of the show and mimicked the performance styles of 90s pop music videos. And the lyrics of the song that we sang were adapted from Munoz's theory of queer counter-public spheres that function in opposition to racism and homophobia. And Histra Theater, this was a piece that we created first in 2009 and then revisited in 2019. So the politics of motherhood informed these next two projects that I'll talk about. Histra Theater began at Art Basel Miami Beach. The title was taken from the French philosopher Luce Irigaray feminist rereading of Plato's allegory of the cave, which draws on parallels between the cave and the womb. And so the first iteration of this work included a durational performance and installation inside 10 large hand-sewn dyed linen banners, and stitched onto the linen banners were messages like "You were born poor and poor you will die," or slogans like "I heart mimesis," or "The herstory of menstrualcy." And over the course of a day, My Barbarian and our guest musicians performed an extended many hours long musical improvisation dressed in red satin costumes and paper mache masks. This image that you're looking at is from the 2019 film we made. We returned to the project at that time and made a full-length vinyl album that served as a soundtrack to accompany a new 22-minute 16mm film that was a collage of staged ritualistic performances edited with found footage taken from 1980s laser discs. So the found footage consisted of clips of death and destruction taken that were from a documentary on Pompeii and intercut with various representations of maternal grief from 1980s classic Hollywood tearjerkers starring Sally Field. In 2018, I lost my son to cancer, and editing these bits of scenes from these films, it was actually it really helped me in my process grieving by re-examining these what I felt were misrepresentations of maternal grief. I was kind of better able to experience or to understand my own experience of grief, kind of contextualize my own experience in relationship to Hollywood's version of grief, which is not accurate. It's cathartic, but not really accurate. Another mother piece, since we're going down that road, this was a piece, A Mother in Other Plays, was an adaptation of Bertolt Brecht's 1932 Marxist play, The Mother. And we first performed this piece at Suzanne Vielmetter Projects in LA in 2013. And the following year, in 2014, we did the piece for the 2014 Whitney Biennial. The Brecht play is based on a Maxim Gorky novel from 1906 about a factory worker's widowed mother who's enmeshed in an underground Bolshevik cartel and ends up a leader in the cause. So the out of paper-mache antique Soviet propaganda newspapers, and each of the masks depicted a different character in the play. We switched around the mask before each scene, each of us playing at least 7 or 8 characters throughout the performance. And we held the mask in performance about 6 to 8 inches away from our face. And this this intentional distance was a way to create a distinction between us as performers and the characters we were playing, and it was a way to kind of show that the apparatus, and that's something that My Barbarian is often interested in revealing, those seams or the backs, the structures and the scaffolding. Accompanying the live performance and the installation was the Universal Declaration of Infantile Anxiety Situations in the Creative Impulse, a 30-minute video exploring the political and personal dimensions of motherhood. And the title combined references to texts by Melanie Klein and Eleanor Roosevelt. And the video included guest performances by artists Mary Kelly and Eleanor Anton, both of whom are we look up to and have been mentors to us, and as well as each of our own mothers, Barbara Gaines, Victoria Gordon, and Adrienne Segade. Oh, next slide, and then we're going to shift the camera around.
So we thought we'd share with you one of the songs from the Polot that Jade described. The Polot has 5 principles, and each principle has a song, and one of the songs is Inspirational Critique. And it asks, "Don't tear me down. Why don't you give me something helpful I can work with? Instead of talking shit and making mean expressions, Don't tear me down, and I will make you feel bad to make myself feel good. I'll give you something you can use to make improvements. Help me grow, and I'll return the favor, but full of positivity. If we're open about it, when institutional thought is ruptured, an inspirational critique can result. A moment in which for a second all is questioned, promoting understanding of the situation that opens itself to new possibilities. La 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 la. Sister, do you really want to leave me this way? Cousin, lost among the trees, won't you help me please find my path? Nephew, do you really want to leave me this way? Teacher, lost among the books, scrutinizing looks, lead me to world. Neighbor, do you really want to leave me this way? Lover, stranded on a beach, you stand out of reach, give me a hand. Honey, do you really want to leave me this way? Mama, nowhere else to go, everybody knows I could love you, I could love you. Try not to be dismissive, I could love you. Try not to be defensive, I could love you. Try to sympathize, I could love you. Try not to be solipsistic, I could love you. Try not to hystericize, I could love. Try not to be overly simplistic, I could love. Try to read a love you, I could love you. I could love you. I could love you. I could love you.
Okay, so with that
We love
introduction, we love you. We could. We would like to open it up to questions after having.
Just a vibe for the questions.
Yeah.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mia.
Of course, my hyperlighter is in there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for answering all the questions I had prepared with your presentations. But I want to start out asking about how you use humor actually and irony, which has been mentioned a number of times tonight. And actually referencing your text, Alex, you said, I think there's an echo happening.
Oh, let's just
I'll mute for a second.
Here. How about now? All good? Okay, great. So Alex, you've said that fun is one way for a community to take care of itself. And Malik, when you were going into your Lithuanian travels earlier, when thinking about that in the context of the Lehman Brothers collapse and having to reroute your airlines, you said there wasn't enough ironically critical performance art in the world to untangle this historical knot. Could you speak a little bit to the role of humor and irony and fun in your work and also the limitations?
I'll say two things and I'll hand it over. I think in the early show corps era, getting laughs was a way to form community. Like that's a way to know that we're present with an audience and hearing that response was a way for us to be together. Also, we were very influenced by kind of queer camp from a different era where you had to speak in code or use double entendre or describe one thing for an official audience is understood differently for another audience. This is something that queer performance and Black performance very often have in common, ability to speak multiply. So irony to me is related to those set of strategies. And there are limitations to being together, as we learned over our 20 years, but that's one way to attempt, to make an attempt.
And I would add a couple things. I think humor is how a big part of how we relate to each other. It's how we kind of make connections. It's just really deeply embedded in our mode of being with each other and making each other laugh, and this kind of like banter, kind of a witty banter. I think we all are interested in improvisation, which is kind of like there's a connection to kind of comedic improvisation and that kind of quick feet humor. And then I think there's also, for me, a sense of humor is or an understanding, especially in the work that I've done outside of My Barbarian with the Theater of the Oppressed, but humor is a strategy for resistance. And it's this idea of the trickster, or even like Bakhtin's like idea of the carnival, where you're sort of undermining the power structures through kind of buffoonery and the grotesque and all of that. So I think all of that, all of those things are sort of present in our use of comedy and theater, and it sort of softens things, but in a really kind of like the dagger, and the dagger goes in. It's kind of like that.
Into your own eye. Yeah, I would just want to speak about irony a little bit. I think for me, my experience of the world is that irony is real, that actually reality is full of ironies. And so that has kind of, in many ways, informed my view of how culture works, how life works. The thing you don't think is going to happen happens. And even my approach to aesthetics is often to be attracted to those things which are somehow placed outside of the valued sort of beauty paradigm, and in some other place where a kind of ironic approach to aesthetics, to art, to the way things look and feel in the world has informed that. So I don't know. I understand why people are potentially critical of humor because of its punching down a lot of the time, and I find stand-up comedy really challenging because of that. But I'm much more interested in improvisational comedy because it comes out of a group kind of making up a new world together. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at on those things right now.
I also think it kind of taps into something that's not overly prescribed, or it's not always rational. It's more like intuitive humor, at least. Yeah. So
there's that.
Thank you for that. You might have to mute. Great. Thank you. I like thinking of it as a way of world building. So shifting back to the earlier years, I'm curious what the trade-offs were of kind of transitioning from performing in nightclubs to more formal art spaces.
I would say audiences being quiet and listening is one thing. Like when we were, I mean, that's a really obvious thing, but like being able to incorporate text and dialogue and audience participation and all of that wasn't possible in a club setting where people were talking loudly and spilling drinks. It was much more difficult. We were constantly trying to prove ourselves just to be heard, right? Everything had to be us like screaming into a microphone. So it was a way to kind of create moments of stillness, actually have critical discourse on stage, have dramatic scenes, all of that.
But I mean, yes, and we learned so much from being in that arena. And honestly, because I was writing about that era, and because we've been rehearsing with several of the people that we performed in the band with in order to do this next performance, I've been remembering that, that much of our performance strategy, even the kind of like playful antagonism we have toward the institution, that comes from our experience of working in the clubs where that was the attitude, The other thing is, though, because of the moment that we were operating in Los Angeles, there wasn't a whole lot of queer representation within that space. It was pretty white. And so a lot of what we were sort of reacting to was also this sense that we were so different from the audience we were talking to, even as we were making connections to them, so different from the other acts that we were working with, even as we were collaborating with members from them and stealing them for our band. And so I think that the trade-off, the biggest trade-off was we could kind of find a way to be ourselves and set our content outside of that arena. But that said, I mean, I fully love that kind of performance, and I really feel like that's where I'm a dyed-in-the-wool like kind of club performer.
I would just add, one last thing that was maybe a negative trade-off 15 years ago when we came out of the clubs and we were performing in the art contexts early on, before institutions sort of started to embrace performance and take it seriously and give like actual physical spaces to performers. We were often hired as like the entertainment for art parties, or like there would be an anniversary celebration. Oh, get My Barbarian to play. So we were kind of thought of as, even the piece that Malik discussed, The Case of the Stairs, we were really playing with our kind of troubled identity crisis of being sort of the help in the museum institutional context.
Yeah, and Jade's right, that's changed a lot over the years, but I think, and early on, art has this like avant-garde thing, right? Where you're supposed to kind of do things that are different or provocative or redefine the terms, right? So there was some interest in bringing performance into these spaces, but that didn't mean there was any infrastructure or knowledge or love, having water was something that for the first 10 years was impossible. And that's really changed, quite significantly. I mean, obviously, we've been supported in this experience at the Whitney with you and Adrienne and everybody. Raul and but I'm sure you know more than we do, being in the meetings that you're in, that it definitely goes against the grain. And I remember, this is such a tangent, but I remember when I saw that Judson Dance Theater show at MoMA a few years ago that Thomas Lax and Anna Yanevsky curated, when I realized that there was a green room for the dancers built into the floor plan. I thought this is the revolutionary moment where art has finally understood that performance involves human life and some degree of care has to go into that. And museums aren't set up to have audiences and chairs and those kinds of things. So I think that we've been a part of that transformation, and I think that's one of the things that shows in the exhibition.
Definitely. Just a reminder to you. Thank you. That is very true. I'm glad that we're at this stage of the transformation. And just going to plug again, your December 18th performance can be accessed on the Whitney website, whitney.org/songbook. And I think we have time for one more question. So if anyone wants to drop that into the chat, please, into the Q&A, please do so. But if not, I might proceed with ending on the exhibition. So can you just tell us about what it feels like? What are the challenges of bringing a sense of theatricality into institutions and into art spaces, and how you were able to maintain the dynamism of your work in a gallery space?
It took a lot of work. Do you want to say?
It was a lot. Well, we started with the art. We started, the project was impacted by COVID and postponed, and the exhibition completely transformed because of COVID. And while it was horrible and awful in so many ways, it gave us the opportunity of having a bit more time, and it gave us the opportunity to kind of delve into our the archive and create an archive. We have 192 hours of archival footage that now exists and is logged and organized, and we drew from that. And then it was a lot of compiling and editing and throwing out and really whittling it down to the 2-hour piece that you see. And then there was the relationship, I think, with the curator and the exhibition designer that I think really helped shape what is in the space right now to make it what it is. That's so beautiful.
I mean, I think for us, the question of how to show the work has always been one that we've explored a number of different ways. But, you know, the key thing for a theatrical experience for us was being able to use light and light and space in relation to, you know, bodies usually. And in this case now, the bodies are our bodies throughout 20 years of performing, projected simultaneously onto 3 different screens. So the logic of the triad, that's the sort of foundation of the group, was used to help us figure out how to create these kinds of relationships in the space. And then we worked with the lighting designer and with the exhibition designer to make it all kind of come to life, but really thinking about techniques that have been in existence for quite a long time that maybe do, again, go against the grain of the kind of white cube gallery logic, but here, which is about, you know, the motion of light in a space and the changing of colors to reflect mood, sometimes ironically. And that's kind of, you know, that was it. I mean, I'm very proud of this installation because it's the first time I think we felt that our work really made sense in relation to the museum space without us being there. We're still there, but without us physically having to be there. And so, yeah, it was quite an experience. And it all kind of came of a piece with the opportunity to also make the book. We had a chance to really look at what we'd made over these years and then find ways to show them.
And then just creating, I think, one of the ways that we were able to kind of create some kind of internal logic with the installation was trying to figure out relationships between the objects that were going to be in the room and the videos. So creating those connections and then really using the objects in the space to determine which parts of the video, which part of our archive would end up in the video. So it was a lot about like those relationships and making sense of the objects in a way that was useful, I guess, outside of being like objects in performance or in video.
Which is also to say we have a lot more archive that isn't in that show. So.
There's a big loft up there, in case anyone's interested.
Lots of editing went down that didn't get included in the exhibition. So we have a few more surveys that we could do.
Saving it up.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I'm so excited about what you have shared with us and what is to come. So thank you again to My Barbarian and to the Whitney Public Programs team and to everyone who joined us on this Zoom. And we will hopefully see you on the 18th.